Hi, my loves. Welcome to Body Wisdom, your podcast for all things related to nervous system regulation, feeling grounded in your body, and improving your relationships. I'm your host, Courtney Beyer, a holistic occupational therapist and yoga instructor based in Southern California. I am incredibly passionate about helping women connect to their mind, body, and soul to heal from trauma and truly thrive in their lives. If that sounds like you, you are in the right place. So grab your headphones and let's dive into today's episode. Hi, guys. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest today, MJ Renshaw. MJ is the founder of Being Method, a course on the science of spirituality. One thing I love so much about MJ is how she is able to explain some scientific topics about our bodies in a really clear and digestible way. If you follow MJ on Instagram, you know she is a dedicated mother, wife, and she is also a fellow horse girl. I am so excited to have her here with us today and to hear her wisdom about feeling regulated in our bodies and feeling peaceful in our relationships. MJ, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I didn't know you were a horse girl.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I saw that you recently got a horse.
Okay, I didn't get a horse, but I'm part boarding.
Yeah.
So I don't have the time. Honestly, I look at them for sale all the time and I'm like, I just don't have the time yet, but soon.
Yes. It's so cool to fulfill our hobbies as adults, especially when we once had them as a child or like growing up. And it sounds like you're a pretty seasoned horse girl. So I'm sure it'll be so fun. But yeah, you have such a unique background and diverse background. And I would just love to hear a bit about your story and your journey and what brought you to create Being Method.
Very good question. I am very curious. I grew up in a family that my dad's dad, my grandfather, was a very big influence on my life. And he was a mechanical engineer, but he was also an intuitive. So he was a medium. So I grew up with this programming of a deep honoring for science, but also spirituality. No one in my family was religious, but everyone was deeply, deeply spiritual, really connected to nature and life force energy and things like that. So I had that programming growing up, and that was something that I was always really curious about. I was just curious about everything. My mom always joked that I would ask a million questions. And I still do. Like I asked her yesterday, she was over. I was like, you know how trucks have those magnets? How do they turn a magnet off? And my mom was like, how are you still asking me questions like that? So yeah, I love learning things. So that's kind of where the Being Method came about. I went to university and studied philosophy again. I love asking questions. And then I dropped out. And then I went to U of T to do a college course on marketing to try to be a little bit more practical, but practicality just doesn't work well for me. So I dropped out. And then I went to school to be an osteopath, which is very science. And that wasn't right for me. So I dropped out. And I did a total of probably 12 years of postgraduate education with no degree to show for it. So I was like, well, it's still information I learned. So I started my own business and it is so aligned. So it's everything that I used when I studied, but I didn't have to pigeonhole myself into one thing. And yeah, it feels really fun. So Being Method is very much sciencey and it's very much spirituality and a deep honoring and reverence for both worlds.
Yeah, that is so amazing because it really is so cool to know exactly what's happening to your body on a cellular level, you know, like it's so helpful to know like when this happens and I start to get all these things bubbling up inside of me, it's because of this. And yeah, I just feel like your course is so good at explaining all of that and just it's amazing. I'm curious, this is so offbeat, but do you know your human design?
I am a projector.
Okay. Yeah. I just had a feeling that you were either a manifestor or a projector. I don't know why, but that's amazing. Do you ever use your human design to kind of like help you in your
business?
Yeah.
Definitely. I had a reading a while ago, like years and years ago, and she was like, you're not really meant to work. And I was like, that so aligns with me. I do well dreaming, having lots of time to dream and just be. Hence Being Method.
Yeah.
So my business is very intentionally designed so that I don't have burnout. There are some times where I don't resonate with my human design because sometimes I can really get into like a work groove and I can work hard and long for long periods of time, but I don't know if that's just because my work is so fun to me.
It's definitely really cool because, yeah, you can kind of take things or leave things too as they are, and some things align and it's all so intricate. So, you are also married, yes, and your husband's name is Ian, and you guys are so adorable. I like melt every time you post about him, and you guys are just so supportive of each other. And that's really cool to see. And something that I talk about a lot is like regulating your nervous system so that you can feel good in your relationships. And I'm curious, take me back all the way to when you guys first met. And what were some signs that this was going to be a relationship that you felt safe in and that it was going to be like a good long term decision?
I met him when I was working in a coffee shop and he was a customer. And he would come in and we would just kind of have like small talk. It was a small coffee shop, kind of like very intimate. You got to know your regulars. And him and I definitely had a connection. We were both in relationships with other people. So there was no flirting or anything going on. But I referred to him as my customer. Him and I just like so deeply connected immediately. Like there was something just cosmic. So I don't know what that was, whether it was a nervous system, what if science was happening. Like I have no idea, but there was something unexplained. Like I saw him, I met him, and I loved him, like pretty much immediately. Another really cool thing that happened, so we started dating years later when we had both left our partners and we reconnected. And within like maybe a week, I was at his house and we napped together. And I had this experience where I fell asleep on him. And I am a very like, my nervous system's pretty wired. Like I'm like looking out for danger all the time. And I fell asleep on him and I woke up and I was like, what just happened? Like I just fell asleep on essentially a stranger man that I know I love, but like still literally women's biggest threat. And he talks about that moment too, because he was like, I just saw you just felt so safe. And he was like, it was that moment where I knew like I loved you and like I wanted to be with you forever. So, I mean, on an energetic level, like there was definitely like the feminine surrendering there, but I also didn't have to try. He was just this presence where I felt so safe with him right away. And he is not a perfect man. Like he has definitely made mistakes. He slipped up. My husband has a very fragrant path. Like he's been to jail. He's been homeless. Like he's not, like this textbook Ivy League man coming out like with the perfect family and the perfect dad. So he has his own healing to do. But overall in our relationship, I do just fundamentally feel safe with him in the decisions that he makes and the way he tries to help me and support me. So
Oh my gosh, I have like full body chills. It just is, yeah, it's when you feel that, like I can even sense that you just like really dropped into your body when you guys first met, even. And like you had this inner knowing, even, it seems like, which is so crazy that sometimes our body just knows. And even though your body, like cognitively, you didn't really know what was happening because you were in relationships. So you probably weren't even thinking about that, but your body probably felt something that it just knew something down the line. And then when you were able to be together and when you are able to fall asleep, your nervous system is just so safe and feeling relaxed. And that's just so cool. Was there anything that he in particularly did that made you that you witnessed and you're like, okay, that's like a green flag. I feel safe with that.
definitely a couple things. So I was like very clear with him on our first date with a few things. The first was that I wouldn't be sleeping with him. It's just something that I don't do. No shade to anyone who does. I personally like just I have trauma with sexual stuff. So I was like, it's not gonna happen until I feel really safe with you. And he was like, cool. Like there was no, weird, like sometimes people try to talk you into it or whatever. So he was very cool with consent. Big green flag for me. He was also very consistent and very communicative right from the start. I never wondered. I think there was one time he didn't text me back and he had fallen asleep. So he knew what he wanted. He wanted me. He wanted to be with me. He wanted to date me. And he was like, it was consistent communication. I was never left wondering, like, oh, how does he feel? Like, does he want me? He was like, no, you're my wife. I want you to be my wife forever. And I'm not saying everybody needs a guy who's going to say that, but like, I knew where we stood all the time. There was no gray area, and that's what I wanted. And that's how I communicated with him. Like I was like, I like you and I want to be with you. And he, reciprocated that energy. So I think just having that like groundedness from him, that clear communication, knowing that he was consistently going to be there. He has amazing integrity. So if he says he's going to do something, he does it. And even like above and beyond. Today, I went out walking with our kids and one of them started crying. And I was like trying to push her stroller and carry the baby. And I texted him, like, can you help me? And I literally saw him sprint out the front door and then sprint up the street. Like he's like just the best. I wish everyone had an Ian.
I was literally just going to say, everybody needs to take notes. And I really do wish that as well. It's so easy to sometimes get caught up in somebody that doesn't really provide you those things, but like it's so possible, you know? It's
Yes,
so possible to find that person that helps us feel at ease. But it also really does take that ability to see those, green flags. Would you say that, before when you guys first got together, were these behaviors, they were present from the get-go? Was there any time that you got maybe like a little anxious and felt nervous with what was happening or?
definitely. Like it wasn't like I met him, we went on our first date and everything was peachy.
Mhm.
We both had immense healing to go through and we still are. Like we've been together 6 years, married for, I don't even know, a couple of them, but we're still healing our triggers, right? Like that's what intimacy is. You're going to get with someone and it's never going to be rainbows and butterflies all the time. Like you guys are going to trigger each other's wounds. And him and I have both done a type of couples therapy called the emotional freedom technique. Maybe you've heard of it, but it's big and it's beautiful because you learn each other's triggers. So in a fight, rather than being totally offended by how he's acting when he's triggered, I can say to myself, "Oh, he's triggered right now." And then I can, try to regulate myself so that we can co-regulate. And whether that's taking a break or whether it's just trying to extend a little bit of empathy to him. But we work on that constantly because we're both people with pasts. We're not showing up to this relationship totally healed and perfect. Maybe that happens for some people, but it hasn't for us. And we've definitely slipped up. Like we've sometimes said things we wish we could take back or misunderstood each other and gotten into arguments. But we understand that if one of us, if we can both together actively work to try to regulate ourselves and help co-regulate with the other person, now it gets to the point where it's like, if something happens, we work it out pretty quickly and very calmly because we have this framework to go through. So I would say that definitely there, I have an anxious attachment. So I definitely had to work through that at the beginning with, and I've also been cheated on and I've experienced loss in my life. So he's also really aware of that and very comfortable to be like, okay, do you need me to text you when I get there? Do you need me to text you, when I'm halfway on my run? Because I'm always like, oh my God, please just stay in contact because I'm worried. He's so responsive to that and he empathizes with me. So, yeah, I'm definitely not like the perfect healthy attachment person, but I have someone who's willing to try and grow with me and to understand where I need a little bit of help. And I try to understand where he needs a little bit of help too.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful because even when you find somebody that's more secure and that does give you all those green flags and that, helps your body feel safe, it's not going to automatically heal our anxious attachment styles because we're still going to, like what you said, your body's always going to scan and look for things like actually look for things to get stressed and anxious about still, even if the person is very secure. So that's really cool to hear that you were able to bring some light to some of these anxious tendencies, maybe, and that he was able to hold that. When you communicated some of your expectations or some things to kind of help support you, was he immediately really responsive to that? Like, how did he respond to that request?
Really well. Like I've lost my big brother, I lost my dad. So it's so understandable with someone who's been through like something like that. And they were both sudden. So
Mhm.
he understands that when I can't get a hold of someone, those thoughts start to come up like, is this happening again? Have I lost someone in my life again? So he's totally responsive. I think for the most part, we're both really happy to do what we need to do to help the other person feel more comfortable. I never want him to feel like there's any sort of, the shoe's going to drop in our relationship. I want him to feel safe with me too. So I always tell people like, you don't have to show up totally healed and you don't have to find someone totally healed. It's not going to happen, but you can find someone who's really willing to work with you. And that's
Mm.
the key. And like, there are some things that Ian has done in our relationship where I hope he never does them again. And the thing is that he won't, because I've told him this, that deeply hurt me and he
Mhm.
would never do it again. And that's a big difference for me in this relationship than ones in the past, because I could say to someone, this deeply hurt me when you did this. And then a few months later, they're doing it again. And then they're doing it again. And then they're doing it again. And you're like, okay, you're not willing to grow with me. You're not willing to view this as a sacred space where we can learn, be each other's mirrors, and, create a love bubble, right?
If you
But
have
Ian's
been
very willing to
loving
do
this
that. And so am
episode
I.
so far and you're really desiring to take this work a step deeper, I invite you to my program, the Body Focused Healing Program for Anxious Attachment. I love this group so much because it is actually a hybrid group program and one on one with me. So you have access to my course, Choosing Her, which will help you move through nervous system regulation and healing your anxious attachment style. And you also get a one on one session with me where you get to create a custom nervous system healing map, which is so helpful and is something that all of my one on one clients use truly in every aspect of their lives. I definitely recommend hopping in this program if this episode is really resonating with you. Head over to my Instagram and send me a DM if you are interested. All right, let's get back to the episode. When you feel those triggers kind of bubble up inside of you, I know it's so difficult sometimes to really ground yourself and communicate from that grounded place. I would love to know like what your process is because triggers can be really confronting and they make our bodies feel all wiggly and that visceral reaction can be intense. So I would love to know how you connect to your body and move through that.
Ian and I are both really big prayer people. We're not
Mm.
religious, but we both like praying. I will usually act like a total bitch in my head for like 30 minutes. Being like, and then you did this, and then you did that. And then once I get that out of my system, I can I really think about it ahead of time. Like I try to like give myself a lot of space to get to a regulated place. I don't want to come to him right away all emotional, even though I know Ian's fine with that. He can hold my emotions. We've played this game long enough to know that like he's comfortable with me coming to him angry, sad, whatever it is. But I really want to come to him and be able to communicate fully from my heart, not from like a guarded place of trying to, attack or defend myself or whatever. So I try to get as calm as I can by myself. And maybe that means like taking some space, going on a walk or a bath or something, praying, just being like, oh my God, please help me. I find it really easy for me to communicate very clearly and exactly what I need in a very loving and kind way written. And Ian feels that way too. So sometimes when we have something happening, we'll write to each other and it disperses really quickly. Sometimes that's hard for other people because there's text can be hard. So I definitely don't go into the texting being like, I'm going to argue my point. I'm going to go in and be like, okay, here's how I'm feeling. I love you so much. I'm sorry that I said this, whatever. I'm just trying to like come together and collaborate with him. But yeah, I think just anybody's got tools, right? Like you could do tapping or breath work or a bath or a walk. Just use whatever tools you know can help you get back to kind of like a more sane place, right?
I love that. I think that will be really expansive for so many people to hear that there are those tools that you can use. And it's okay to feel like you're like a raging bitch, like as long as you're not taking that out. And, it is tricky because, of course, there's times where we're not perfect and we don't take that space to kind of be with ourselves and we react and that's definitely that happens. And like what you mentioned, it sounds like Ian is able to hold those emotions with you, but obviously the world is like a lot better of a place and we're able to come back to our partners in a clear, grounded way. In those moments where you feel like you are not able to take space and you maybe reacted or felt like that visceral reaction kind of just took over your body. How do you manage those feelings like afterwards? Like once the repair has happened, how do you be with your body to not let like those feelings of shame take over?
That's a really good question. I think I make like for me, vulnerability, like shame dissipates for me when I share with someone I love. So if I can come to Ian very openly and honestly and deeply remorseful about what I did, that helps me. If I really make the repair from a place that, like, I know what I did was wrong and I'm deeply sorry. I have never apologized really to anyone until I met him. And then I've been learning to apologize. Before, my apologies used to be like, well, like hidden with disguise or kind of brushed off. Like, yeah, I'm sorry I said that. And now I'm learning to like really go into the shame and guilt and like sit with it and be the person that's like, oh, I messed up. And that is really liberating, like sitting with those emotions. Because if you don't, you're going to walk around with guilt and shame, right? So it's been really helpful for me to be like, oh, I'm like, this is a sticky spot that I don't want to go there with someone else. So can I sit with that and be like, oh, I feel deep shame that I said that to you or acted that way and that I hurt you. And just really making a good apology. Usually I feel free afterwards because I'm only human.
That freedom, that sense of like, ah, that is amazing. I love that. It's just like, what responsibility too. And it can be hard to take that responsibility as well, you know? It's so easy to sometimes want to point the finger and just say it's the other person's fault. And I think what you mentioned, like Ian's the first person that you were really able to like kind of take that responsibility. So would you say that, you mentioned that you identify more with an anxious attachment style. Do you feel like this is something that you have healed, or do you think that an anxious attachment style is something that you are just kind of constantly tending to and healing throughout your relationships?
That is a very good question. It's really easy to feel healed in something where you're not being triggered with it. So, when you're not in a relationship, you can do all this work on yourself, preparing yourself to go into a relationship. And then anyone knows, as soon as you go into that relationship, you're like, whoa, bombarded with all these things you need to heal. That you're like, I thought I worked on this, but you're all of a sudden in the arena. Ian and I have a very safe and secure life right now. Like, we've got 2 kids. It's very routine, very consistent. He's always there. We communicate well. There isn't a lot of conflict. So as of right now, yes, I have healed it. But who's to say in the future, right? We always have these little triggers that are going to pop up in the mirror of our loved ones. Let's say for my daughter, for example, or my son, I have an anxious attachment style with them. Like, I'm always worried about them. Part of my path, my work is to allow my family to be free so that I'm not helicoptering around them for safety because I've experienced loss in the past. So I constantly work on that, being like, it's okay, they're here, like I love them. So yeah, I think we can get better with our wounds, but depending on how deep they are, why you have an anxious attachment style, it can always it's definitely always there for me in terms of fear of loss. So yeah, I mean, mine's definitely still present. It's just not getting triggered a lot right now, but I'm sure once my kids turn into teenagers and they're driving and maybe staying out all night, it will be ever present.
Yeah, I resonate with that so much. And you mentioned the loss that you've experienced in your life with your dad and your brother. And I'm just so seeing you with that and relate. I also lost my father a few years ago. And oh my goodness, that feeling is just, it sticks with you in so many different ways. And one thing that I noticed for myself, because I met my current boyfriend a few months after I lost my father. So it was a crazy, like, up and down thing. And one thing that I noticed when I first got in a relationship with him was that I was kind of worried that he would just disappear. Because when you lose somebody, even though you logically know that they didn't just one day disappear, it kind of feels like that. It's like, and especially I know you mentioned it was very sudden and out of the blue for both of your losses. And I felt like one day my relationship was just going to like disappear. Did you feel that at all with your relationship? And like, how did you kind of navigate that?
Definitely. I have, like, even just beyond loss, I was cheated on a lot by some exes, or I had some exes who were doing things that weren't necessarily, you know, good. So I had all those fears of like things that had happened to me in the past, of that happening in my current relationship. And I think part of the healing has been to openly talk about that with Ian. So, like, say there was someone in his life, so I felt maybe had nefarious intentions. And I would be like, okay, I'm actually feeling really jealous right now. So rather than going through his phone or whatever someone might do for jealousy, I'm just going to talk to him. And I said, like, I have an intuition about this person and I'm so fine with you having female friends, but I just feel like they have nefarious intentions. Turned out they did because I swear, listen to your intuition. But yeah, I forget what your question was, but I would say just to talk about it openly.
You're so right. Oh my gosh, listening to that intuition, like that little voice inside of you that's like telling you something, it's always right. But yeah, it's like those feelings of abandonment when you experience loss. I found that I wanted to like push my boyfriend away sometimes. Like he would do something nice for me. And my subconscious was like, no, don't let him in. Like he's going to disappear one day. And so maybe just like push him away because then you won't have to go through that feeling of loss again. And yeah, and I loved what you said though, like talking to them, telling them. And I think the biggest takeaway here is to be able to openly talk about what you're feeling.
So I would say, the more you can open up to someone and be like, hey, and here's another way that I'm a little bit crazy. And they look at you and go, that's not crazy at all. I'm here for you and I love you and we can work through this together. That's going to build trust. So the more that you can do that with someone and show them your stuff and they show you their stuff, it's going to build trust. So now I know whatever's going on with me, whether it's like a nervous system thing or I'm triggered about the past, like I can 100% say that to Ian and he's going to look at me lovingly and accept me. And I think that's the trick to being in relationship where you think I shouldn't show this person these things. I have to hide away all the things that are quote unquote wrong with me and that will build intimacy, but it's not. It's going to build a relationship on false things, something where you feel like you need to hide away from the other person and you're not going to really get to know each other. Relationships are built on intimacy, which is being vulnerable together and showing someone your true self. And that's how you're going to have a soulmate. You will never have a soulmate if you can't let someone in because they won't even know who you are. But if you want a soulmate, then you can be vulnerable and show someone all the icky, sticky parts of you. And that person is going to see you for who you are and accept you. And that will be so deeply healing to have someone look at the gross parts of you and be like, I love you. That is so incredibly healing. And, it has helped me look at myself and say, yeah, I love her too. Like, I love me too. So I think relationships can be an amazing arena for deep, 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 deep community healing.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I'm like melting right now. And I cannot wait to go back and re-listen to this again and listen to that because it's so true. And I feel like that'll be so helpful to hear because there is this thought and that we need to show up perfect. And especially in like the beginning stages of a relationship when you're meeting somebody is that, oh my goodness, I can't share this with them. They'll think I'm so messy. They will think this of me. I need to show up perfect, but that's not going to be what creates a relationship that lasts for years and years where you can have children and all of that. And being able to show up messy and showing who you are. And then it's going to create so much safety. And do you feel that, you use so many amazing modalities like breath work? You talk a lot about breath work and you teach a lot about breath work and so many other modalities as well. Do you feel like all of that has helped your relationship a lot?
Absolutely. I think like Ian and I always joke, like we never have an us problem. Almost all of our problems are one of us, So I think that this is what I say, find someone who's willing to grow because it can't be one person in the relationship who's willing to grow and heal and do all the things and the other person wants to watch Netflix. It won't work. You gotta either both want to be totally unconscious together or get conscious together. So find someone, they don't have to be perfect, but find someone who's interested in growing and interested in a life where they're going to look at themselves and be like, like, how can I get more free? How can I get more conscious? How can I wake up a little bit more? How can I be more mindful in my life? How can I I got 70 years here left. Like, how can I juice it? I want to juice it with you. So I feel really, really, I feel like I won the lottery with a marriage. Thank you for having me.
Okay, my loves, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I really love hearing from you all about how the show resonated with you and would love it if you sent me a DM on Instagram to @herbodywisdom to keep the convo going. If you are loving the show, it would mean so much to me if you left a quick rating and review on Apple or Spotify. Thank you so much for listening. Catch you next time.